Hello and welcome to the Liverpool Connection podcast. I am Daz, Steve's with me, and a very special guest all the way from Southport. Yay! Former Liverpool and Scottish international Gary Gillespie. Hiya, Gary.
Hi, gents. How we doing? Okay, good?
Yeah, we're good. Nice and early here, and obviously lunchtime for you. But let's get into it. Obviously, you moved to Liverpool Football Club in '83. Before that, were you an actual Liverpool supporter?
No, I wasn't actually. I moved from my hometown club, Falkirk, where obviously I was brought up and managed to play for them. But I left Scotland very, very early at 17 and went to Coventry. And growing up, I was probably a Celtic supporter more than anything else, purely and simply because Celtic were more or less the best team that I had seen, certainly in Scotland and maybe even around like the country as well. Celtic were like quite predominant and obviously winning the European Cup in '67. I was born in 1960, so I kind of grew up with like Celtic being the dominant kind of team in Scotland. So I supported them more as a boy, but I very seldom got to go and watch any football because I was too busy playing. The only time I can remember going to football matches was when I went with my granddad down to Falkirk, which was our local team, as I said. But very seldom, if ever, went through to Glasgow to watch Celtic because, you know, you were playing 3 times a weekend. You were playing in the morning and a Saturday for the Boys Brigade, and then you would maybe have or the school and then the Boys Brigade in the afternoon, and then on Sunday you would have your juvenile team. So your whole weekend was really taken up with playing football as opposed to watching it. I mean, if I kind of had allegiance to an English team at that time, it would probably be either Chelsea or Leeds, purely and simply because a lot of like the Chelsea boys and the Leeds boys were Scottish, and I kind of like, you know, you looked for that. I know that Liverpool obviously had like the likes of St John and Big Yatesy as well, but I think Leeds and Chelsea were probably the teams that I kind of looked for because they had an awful lot of Scottish players, but I didn't really have an English team as such. And then I went to Coventry when I was 17 years of age, and that was kind of when my education and football kind of became a professional kind of level and full-time level. And then it progressed from there.
So, you know, when you moved, like 325 grand these days is, you know,
it's a week's wages.
I know in football terms is nothing, but you know, when you got that call, because you know, obviously you had an agent.
No, I didn't. No, there was no agents then. No, absolutely.
Oh wow, even better.
Yeah, none whatsoever, mate. I mean, it was bizarre, really, because at Coventry at the time, we had about 9 players out of contract at Coventry. And my contract was up. So I remember talking to quite a few teams. I talked to Stoke City, I talked to West Brom, I talked to Arsenal as well. And to be honest with you, I was as near to signing for Arsenal as anybody, to be quite honest with you. And then it was only when I got back from talking to Arsenal the next morning, Bobby Gould, who was manager at Coventry at the time, phoned me up. I mean, there's no mobiles back in these days and whatever. It was always, you know, it was just a landline. And he said, Liverpool have made a bid for you, made an offer for you. Would you be interested in going up and talking to them? Well, I mean, what do you do and what do you say? You can't turn down Liverpool. I mean, the European champions, league champions, such a great team. So I kind of went up and talked to Liverpool, and that was kind of the deal done. As soon as I talked to them, didn't think too much about it. As I said, the attraction was obviously playing for a fantastic team at the time. But in fairness to Coventry, they did offer me more money than Liverpool from contractual wise. But I just thought the opportunity was far greater at Liverpool than maybe what it was at Coventry. Hence the reason why I signed. I always remember driving up. We were sponsored at Coventry by a car company called Talbot, and we had all like our sponsored cars, and they were all sky blue, with like, you know, Gary Gillespie drives Talbot for Coventry City written blazoned across the side of it. I always remember driving into Anfield. I think it was in early July or something like that. and driving into the gates at Anfield in this sky blue, like kind of like Talbot, with like your name and Coventry City blazoned all over the side. But it was different days back then. You know, there wasn't the media speculation and the media hype that there is now. I kind of got away with that a little bit. But then I was Joe Fagan's first signing for 325 grand. Yeah.
Steve.
Hey, Gary, good morning. It's good to see
Steve,
you again.
And you.
Mate. You know, I was just reviewing some stuff on my Facebook page, and you were here in town. We brought you here. It was only 2 years ago you were here in town for part of our Legends Night. And I look back and say, wow, it seems so long ago. Just the world has changed so much, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was just thinking when and I thought that it was about 2 years ago. It wasn't last year, obviously it was the year before that. But as you say, it seems like an eternity with obviously what's going on and what's happened. But yeah, it was a good gig. Thanks very much for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we had a great time, and I know that you enjoy going out and meeting other supporters from all over the world. So on behalf of everybody, you know, we appreciate all the efforts that you and all the other legends make to really bring the story of Liverpool out to everyone. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Hey, I wanted to ask you because I read an article from that Carl Clemente wrote. You know, he's been a previous guest of ours here, and he wrote that the first time you came to Anfield, you were playing for Coventry City, and you got to have lunch with Bob Paisley, right?
No, it was Bill Shankly.
Bill Shankly. I'm sorry. Yeah. So that,
yeah.
You know, obviously he was a legend even back then, and and he brought you to the stadium. So I was wondering if you could tell that story a little bit.
Yeah, it was. I mean, at Coventry at the time, we were managed by a guy called Gordon Milne, who had a long history and a playing career at Liverpool under Bill Shankly. So he was one of Shankly's players. And we always used to travel up, and we had a pre-match meal at the Post House Hotel, I think in Haydock, which is a place just literally outside Liverpool. And Bill Shankly had obviously retired, but was obviously still in contact with Gordon Milne and good friends with him. So it was kind of bizarre. We'd come down from the rooms and we'd gone into lunch, and who am I sat next to? But I'm sat next to the great Bill Shankly, and he's got this brown suit on with this orange shirt on with this like red and white striped tie, and you think, look, not the best like dress sense in the world, Bill, but what a manager! And he encapsulated the whole kind of team just by talking, and he never shut up over like the pre-match meal, but you're kind of in awe and you're like aghast and you're thinking, this is the great man, and you're hanging on every word. And then to travel into the ground, he got on the bus with us and travelled into the ground and actually went in where like the players' entrance was and came in with us to Anfield Stadium. It was a fantastic experience for a young boy like myself and a young kid like myself to meet the great man. I always remember going into Anfield as well. It must have been it was back in the day when like every Saturday it was 3:00 kickoff, not like just now. The kickoffs vary so many days and so many times, but it was always like a Saturday 3:00, and we must have got into Anfield about 1:30 in the afternoon, and it's like an hour and a half before the game. And I always remember there's always a tradition: you go out and look at the pitch. And I walked out at Anfield, and you walked, saw the sign. Well, this is Anfield, and you walk down the stairs and you walk up. And this is 1:30 in the afternoon, an hour and a half before the kickoff, and the place is absolutely packed. You look to your right-hand side, the Kop is absolutely, literally jam-packed. And I'm thinking, geez, what a club this must be to play for. And, fortunately for me, it wasn't so long after that I got the honour and the privilege to play in front of that Kop. But it was unbelievable. The game, we were actually, Liverpool were top of the table at the time, and Coventry were second in the league, which was a rarity for Coventry at the time. I think we'd only played about 9 or 10 games. But they beat us 1-0. I think Graham Souness scored the goal. But it was the 1-0 going on about 21-0. Honestly, we couldn't get out our own half. It was such a struggle for us to play against them. They were a great team back in that day. And that's probably one of the best Liverpool teams that I've ever seen and ever played against. As I say, 1-0 going on 21-0. But it was a great experience for us, and certainly for myself.
It had been quite the experience for you, not just coming to Liverpool, but I know prior to that you had played against Kenny for a few times, and you've rated him as probably the best player you've ever played against, and now here you are playing with him. That had to have been something, that you really had to pinch yourself when you got to Liverpool and you see all these great players that are just dominating Europe at the time.
Yeah, I mean, you were kind of a little bit in awe the first day you walked through the door into the dressing room. Back in that day, we used to get changed at Anfield and get the bus down to the training ground at Melwood. So it was a bit, I was 23 years of age, which nowadays seems quite experienced, but I was still a little bit raw, even although I'd played about 200 odd games in the first division. And to walk into that dressing room and see the likes of Kenny, who I grew up idolising as a boy, because obviously I was a Celtic supporter and he was a key figure at Celtic. And then you look and you've got Souness, you've got like Alan Hansen, you've got Phil Neal, and you just look around the dressing room and it's littered with like household names and stars. And it did take me a little while to get accustomed to it and used to it. And I have to say that all these guys that I mentioned, they make you feel so welcome and so much at home that it was quite easy to get on with them in regards to like you being your teammates. But from my perspective, you look at these guys and you kind of have them on a pedestal a little bit, and it's sometimes difficult to appreciate that you're on a par and you're on a level playing field with these guys now that you've signed for Liverpool.
Was that make it a little easier because you were able to play with Kenny and Stevie Nicol and Souness, other Scotsmen were on the team. So did that help you out at all to be able to come into that kind of environment?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of Scots players at the time. You've mentioned most of them there. Ken McDonald came as well, and obviously with Alan and Kenny and Graham Souness, Stevie Nicol. There was a little kind of Scottish kind of clique, with like any time that we were out celebrating, it was always like the Scots together. But I think that happens in most football clubs. Unfortunately, at this moment in time, there's not an awful lot of Scottish players down in England playing in the Premier League, and certainly not at Liverpool. I mean, Andrew Robertson, I think, is the only one and been the first one for a number of years. But we had a good crack, and it was always a great place to go, like that Liverpool dressing room. And I think you don't really appreciate till probably when you finish, and then when you pack in, people ask you so many times, what do you miss about the game, and do you miss playing? And you maybe not miss playing so much, albeit it would be fantastic, but the camaraderie that you form and the friendships you form within that group of players and in that dressing room, I think that's the biggest thing that most players miss when they pack in the game.
We love talking to people that are really from that generation because it gives us a good comparison to the team that Jurgen has built, and we won the league last year, and by a lot of people accounts, it was one of the greatest teams. You're on a great team. I believe it was at 88 when you guys only lost 2 games in the whole season. Yeah. And so I just want to get your thoughts on, the differences and maybe similarities of the two teams.
Yeah, I think when you look at, certainly from this perspective these days, it has changed a little bit in regards to the way that you behave away from the game and like off the pitch. I think that has changed dramatically. But the similarities are, I think, the fact if you look at the guys at this moment, well, maybe not, certainly not this season, but going on last season and the season before that, we had players the likes of Salah, the likes of like Sadio Mane, the likes of probably Firmino as well, players in influential areas of the pitch that can make a difference to to results, but purely by scoring goals and being world-class players. And I think when you look back to certainly my day, you had Rush that could score you the goal. You had Dalglish, who was a world-class player. You had John Barnes, who was a world-class player. You had Aldridge came in for Rush when he moved, a guy that could score goals. And we had literally a lot of Peter Beers there. I didn't even mention him. All players that can really change a game in a split second of play. And I think that was a comparison. And then all the other components around that have got to be in the right place as well. And I think we had that as well. Defensively, you could run parallels with like Virgil van Dijk and Alan Hansen, and then maybe on that periphery, the likes of myself or somebody else coming in alongside of Alan Hansen, and maybe you look at Joe Matip coming in alongside, or Joe Gomez coming in alongside Virgil van Dijk. So there is comparisons, but I think the biggest one, and I think we've had great players at Liverpool throughout the course of the last 30 years, the likes of Gerrard, the likes of Torres, the likes of Mascherano, the likes of Alonso, the Robbie Fowlers, Steve McManamans, Michael Owens, the list goes on. And the one thing that I think you have to have, it's not just players on the pitch, but you have to have a camaraderie within the dressing room. I think you look at all the top sports professionals, whether it be football or soccer, or whether it be American football, whether it be basketball, or whatever sport, you have to have that camaraderie and that bonding within like a group of players in the dressing room. And I think from what I've seen, I don't really know from first-hand experience, but from what I've seen and what I've listened to and heard, I think that was a comparison that certainly, going back to our day, we had that, and I think this team have that at this moment in time as well.
Yeah, I'm sure from the people that we've spoken to, they have so much. They're just as happy as the current squad for winning that title. That way you have this kind of common ground now that you won this title back in the 80s, and now that the current squad has that, and it seems like it's created a stronger kinship between the generations of players and the fans too. So sons are sharing things with their parents that they didn't have that in common before. So it's nice to see. I wanted to ask you, I know in my notes you won 3 championships, league championships. Is there one that stands out more than the other?
It's difficult to say. I think, the first one, 85, 86, when we did the double, that was a little bit special. I was kind of on the periphery that Kenny had just taken over, and I'd more or less broken in as a regular into the first team 85, 86 after like about December sometime. So, I played about half that season. That was, we went on a fantastic run. In fact, it was actually around about now, I think we played Everton and got beat 2-0 at Anfield. And then we went on a fantastic run. I think 12 games, 11 victories, 1 defeat, scored 30 odd goals, conceded 4. And then ended up, that was, sufficient just to pip Everton and do the double when we won the cup as well. But I think 87, looking back, 87, 88 was probably the season that I was at my best. And I think Liverpool were at their best as well, with the likes of Barnes, Beardsley, Aldridge, Houghton, these sort of players. We were an attractive looking side. We played good football, scored a lot of goals, didn't concede too many. And as you rightly say, we only lost 2 games that season. And, it was a big season for us. The only downside to that fact, 87, 88, was the fact that we had been put out of Europe and we couldn't really test ourselves against the best in Europe. It would have been an interesting scenario to see how well we would have done. But that was probably the most pleasing from my point of view, 87, 88. Would
you count that FA Cup loss as your most disappointing? Is that rank up there as?
Yeah, I think, that was, and I'm going into the game, I think everybody thought maybe we were a little bit overconfident. I don't think we were, to be quite honest with you. I think sometimes what's meant to be is meant to be. And I think on that day, we could have still been playing now and we wouldn't have scored. How many times would you put, your money on the goalkeeper saying a penalty of John Aldridge? Aldo was like deadly from that 12-yard spot. So it was a disappointing thing. Looking back, you think we could have done the double probably. I know we did it in 85, 86, but we could have easily done it in 88, 89. 89, 90, I think it was. 87, 88, we could have certainly done it. So there was opportunities for us to achieve quite a bit more than maybe what we actually did achieve. But, that's nitpicking when you look back, and we had a great time and we were successful.
Yeah, I was trying to think, like, which would be more disappointing, losing that FA Cup final or the next year, losing the league on the last day, right? So,
yeah. Well, I think when you put it like that, I think probably losing the league. I think any time that I was at Liverpool, I was there 8 years. The first priority was always to be league champions. That was always the goal. That was always the aim to win the league. And if you got anything else on top of that, it was a little bit of a bonus. So losing to Arsenal in the last kick of more or less the last kick of the game, that was probably more disappointing than the fact that we lost the FA Cup final.
Let me ask you a question that's not footy related. So I see a lot of pictures of golf behind you. So is it just your birthright as a Scotsman to, just like golf? And
no, you have to be a golfer if you're a Scotsman. It's one of these things that's carved in stone or etched in stone. No, I mean, when I was growing up, football was always first, but golf was always second. It was a great place to live, Scotland at the time, because you could play football in the winter, and then come the summertime, then you're out on the golf course, and that stayed with me all the way through my football career as well. Maybe didn't play as much as maybe what I would have wanted to play whilst you're playing football, but certainly now I've made up for it, and I'm an avid golf fan.
Fortunately, I was able to play with Ronnie Whelan the year before you came over to Austin. We didn't get to play together. So who's the better on the links, you or Ronnie?
Well, funny you should mention that, because Ronnie and myself are both members of the same golf club, which is Southport and Ainsdale Golf Club, one next to Hillside and Birkdale. So I played with Ronnie on a regular basis. His handicap's about 9 or 10. My handicap, I think, has come down. We've got a new system now. I think I'm 3 or 4, I think my handicap is, with the new system. So handicap-wise, I'm better than Ronnie, but that doesn't always pan out on the golf course. Giving him as many shots as he gets, he beats me more than I probably beat him, to be quite honest with you.
We heard that his wife is better than both of you guys, so...
Well, she plays a lot more. She plays a lot more. My wife actually joined the same time as Ronnie's wife, Southport and Ainsdale. So we play quite a bit of mixed foursomes as well. So it's a good way. The older you get, I think mixed foursomes becomes quite pleasurable. But certainly, if you'd asked us back in our Liverpool days, myself and Ronnie would be playing golf with our wives, I don't think that would have been looking too happy at you.
Have you had the opportunity to play any courses here in the States, or where are some of your favorite courses besides Scotland?
Yep. Well, the one behind me there, if you can see there, that's Bay Hill.
Okay.
I was very fortunate to have a game of golf at Bay Hill and meet Arnold Palmer at the same time.
Nice.
So managed to meet the man at the same time as play the course. But I haven't played an awful lot. We go to Florida quite a bit, so I've played I say quite a few. There's a few in Florida, but there's a golf course in every corner at Florida, isn't there? Right. So there's been quite a lot that I've played there. But other than that, I haven't really played very much elsewhere in the States. So it's one of these things, yeah.
Does it?
Gary, I wanted to ask you, not obviously, but you didn't score too many goals for Liverpool, but you got to score a hat.
That's 16. 16.
Yeah, hey, that's more than me and Steve.
Yeah.
But you got to score a hat-trick. So that must have felt amazing for a defender, but also, Mr. Jan Molby giving up that penalty for you.
Yeah. He doesn't normally give up much.
Yeah.
To be quite honest with you. It was against Birmingham. It was our last home game of the season, the 85-86 season. And it was nip and tuck, to be quite honest with you, with ourselves and Everton and West Ham. And really the league could have possibly been decided on goal difference. So it was kind of, I always remember Ronnie Moran, I think it was probably about 2 months or something like that before, that Paul Walsh had been in the same situation to have a hat-trick. And we got a penalty, and he took it and he missed it. And so we came in after the game, and Ronnie Moran went absolutely berserk. He was always like the ultimate professional, Ronnie. He always wanted to win by as much as you could win by, and he obviously had a look and thinking that goals could be important. And I always remembered that. And my opportunity became reality, really, like against Birmingham, when I had scored 2, and then we got another penalty. And Jan, who had actually scored a penalty in the game, he kind of was looking at me. Kenny was the manager who was on the pitch at the time. And then, the deciding factor really was when the crowd started singing Gary Gillespie, and they're singing Gary Gillespie. So the cop was like in full voice. So I think it kind of put pressure a little bit, certainly on Jan, and put pressure on the manager as well. And I always remember striding up to take the penalty. It was at the Annie Road end. And I looked across to the left-hand side, and I'm looking at Ronnie Moran, and he's just like, he's in the dugout, and he's like this. He's got his head in his lap, and he's got his hands over his head. And I'm thinking, oh no, I better not miss this. So unfortunately for me, it was, I put a good strike on it and managed to put it in the back of the net. But had I missed, I knew exactly what I was going to get from Ronnie Moran when I went in that dressing room.
Hey, can I ask a question about that, Ronnie Moran? I know he took over after Kenny retired, and so how was playing for under him? I know he was kind of thrust into that position unexpectedly.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, we always kind of knew Ronnie as Bugsy. You know, he was like, and Bugsy was Bugsy. He was like, you know, he was I wouldn't say stroppy, but you know, he was one of these guys that always demanded the best from you, even you know, from the start of training to the end of training. He was always digging you out and wanted the best for you. I don't know if we saw him as a manager or not, to be quite honest with you. I don't think we ever kind of saw him taking over the reins from Kenny. But he was a great character. I mean, to have that length of time at Liverpool and the success that he had, you know, not under just Kenny, but under different managers as well. I mean, his record speaks for itself. And, you know, he was a sad loss when he passed away, obviously. But great fond memories of him. I remember him, he used to join in the five-a-sides with us as well. And I just joined the football club. I must have been there about five months or something like that. And we were playing this little game. And I nicked in front of him and took the ball off him. And accidentally, I must have stood on his toe. And, you know, it was obviously quite a sore one. And he just went absolutely berserk. So for the next 15 minutes of the game, he was chasing me all over the pitch, trying to get a hold of me and try and kick me. And it was just like, you know, when you look back at it, fun times. And then when you get on the bus, you go back up to Anfield and everything's put to rights and, you know, there's no animosity. But he was a great character, Bugsy, great character.
Who were some of your toughest players that you played against?
Well, back in these days, Mark Hughes was a tough opponent. He was physical, strong. Against Liverpool, probably, I'm looking at international players. Butragueno was a great little player for Real Madrid and Spain at the time. Tony Woodcock, going back to a little bit earlier than that. I mean, there was a lot of players that you look at. Mick Harford was one of these guys that, you know, as a big centre forward, you kind of look at him and you think, well, I don't fancy too many like challenges with Mick because he was really, really physical. But I mean, in fairness to Mick could play as well. And there was a guy called Billy Whitehouse. I always remember him. Probably a lot of people won't have heard of Billy Whitehouse, but I always remember playing against Billy, and it was I think it was Boxing Day. Down at Oxford. He was playing for Oxford United, and we were comfortably winning the game 3-0. And Billy had been involved in a car accident about a week before this game, and he'd literally come on the pitch. He's got two black eyes. He's got metal staples like across his nose, you know, like where like his nose is burst open, and he's had metal staples to obviously stitch it together. So we're playing and we're winning 3-0. Boxing Day, cruising, game's more or less gone, last 5-10 minutes or something like that. Kick out comes from the goalkeeper. I go up with him, accidentally again, catch him on the nose. His nose just explodes and bursts everywhere. There's claret absolutely everywhere, and he's down on the ground. And I'm obviously showing a little bit of concern about his well-being. The trainer comes on, and the trainer tries to patch him up. He says, "Billy, you've got to come off. You've got to come off." And he says to the trainer, he says, I always remember, he says, if you take me off, I'll break your effing legs. And I'm thinking, there's only one reason why he wants to stay on, and that's obviously to get retribution against me. So quick as a flash, I thought, 5 minutes to go, we're winning 3-0. Signal to the bench, I've got a bit of a groin strain. Gaff, take me off. Made a substitution, 5 minutes to go, and I went off. But he was a difficult opponent, Billy. Couldn't really play much, but like was physical.
I mean, that's the big difference, I think, you know, back then to now. You could actually, you know, do the hustle and tussle with a player, because now you seem, you know, if you touch another player, you know, it's a free kick or a yellow card, so it is quickly brought out. But back then, to me, you know, footballers were hard as hell, you know. I mean, again, if you had an injury, you'd bring out the bucket with the magic sponge. You know, these days, if you have a slight tweak, you know, you go off. But back then, you just like nails.
I think that one of the big differences about the game now is like the physical attributes that like players had, and you know the physicality of the game back then. I mean, you could get away with far more dangerous tackling back in our day than like what you do now. And to be honest with you, I think we've lost a little bit with the game, with that going out of the game. I think it's heading towards a non-contact sport, to be quite honest with you. I mean, some of the refereeing decisions and the way players go down, but that's the evolvement of the game, and I don't see how we can stop that or change that at this moment in time. But I think when you look back at some of the old games, I think that physicality is sadly missing in this game nowadays. And I think even fans and I think even players, to be honest with you, would prefer it was a little bit more of a contact sport than maybe what it has been in recent weeks.
Sometimes we look at these videos on YouTube. It's some of the highlights that say Maradona and just how robust the tackles were back then. And you kind of equate it to today. It's just you kind of people like our age, in our 50s. We can't relate, to
you're not in your 50s, Stephen.
Yeah. Don't tell anybody. But hey, so but we had that mentality, like get up, and it's just a different game today. Watching.
Well, I think the biggest thing you'll see as well, like you mentioned Maradona there. You go back to George Best as well. All these guys try to stay on their feet. Nowadays, if any of these sort of challenges would come in nowadays, the first thing that players automatically do is fall down to the ground. I mean, the lengths that like certain players, like the likes of Maradona's, the likes of Georgie Best, the lengths that they went to actually try and stay on their feet was quite incredible, to be quite honest with you. As I say, I think that was part and parcel of the game. I understand and appreciate the game has to evolve, but I do think that we have lost something out of the game with that physical kind of element of it.
You spoke earlier about substitutions, and I want to kind of go back to 1984. I know I've read some articles where you feel like that European medal was kind of an empty one because you weren't able to be in the game, with only one substitution allowed at that time. So Stevie Nicol comes on in that game. Was there an already plan on who would be the sub, or you just everybody's on the sideline going, "Hey, I hope it's me," kind of deal?
Well, I think in Europe, you were allowed, I think, 2 subs. I think you could pick two from 5. It might even be more, to be. I can't remember back then. But no, I think you appreciate, when you're on the bench, and it's never quite the same if you haven't played any of the games, sure. Leading up to like the final, and you don't get on in the final to win a medal. Yes, it's lovely, but it is a bit of a hollow kind of achievement because you haven't really contributed that much, right. Albeit you have been part of the squad. But no, I don't think there's any set plan to put whoever on. I think when you look at Nicol came on for Kenny, to be quite honest with you. And then Michael Robinson, I think, came on as well, didn't he? So I don't think obviously the manager, Joe Fagan, looked at the time what's necessary, what's needed. And I'm sure if maybe one of the centre backs had been struggling a little bit, it would have been myself that would have gone on. So no, I don't think it's preempted. It's how the game develops and who you think can like make a difference or maybe shore things up. But you have more options these days, certainly with the amount of substitutions you're allowed, than certainly back in our day.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that David Fairclough would end up getting the moniker of super sub when the subs were limited back then.
Yeah, well, there was in the league, you were only allowed one substitute. I think going back to 86, 1986, when we won the FA Cup final, there was only one sub allowed there. It was Steve McMahon that was the sub. So that's not going back really that far if you think about it. And again, it's something again the game's evolved, and it's probably the right thing, to be quite honest with you, because it gives you an option to make changes, and certainly injury wise, if somebody comes off, I don't think you should be punished by the fact that you can go down to maybe 10 or even 9 players, to be quite honest. So I think the substitution thing is reasonable.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a question. I know when you left Liverpool, you went to Celtic. It was kind of a surprise for you because you had just spoke to Graham Souness, thinking that you're going to have a role on the team, and then the next day you're on your way to Celtic. So, can you give us any backstory on that and how that really all went down?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I think I've told you before, I supported Celtic as a boy, so like it was kind of heart maybe overruling head a little bit. And I always remember going away pre-season that year, that start of that season, and there was always speculation that, I knew nothing about it. It was that everything was kind of kept in the dark a little bit back in these days. As I say, I had no agent, no player had any agent, to be quite honest with you. So there was no kind of contact with that, and you only really listening to rumours and hearing bits and bobs from press guys and what have you. So I didn't really know for a fact that anybody wanted me. In fact, I didn't even want to leave Liverpool Football Club, to be quite honest with you. I had a year left in my contract, so I certainly had another year to go. And I always remember coming back after pre-season. We normally played a game at Anfield on the Tuesday or the Wednesday just to get the feel of the surface and the surroundings. Played in that game, and Souness told me after that game and said, "Well, look, I want you to be alongside Mark Wright. I want you to be my number one centre back. But you've obviously had your injury problems," which obviously I had. I fully accept that, and I accepted it back even then. And he said, "Like, we'll get a fitness program put together with Phil Borsman, who was the physio at the time, and try and get you like playing on a regular basis," which I thought was, fantastic. So I've left Anfield thinking, great, I'm going to be figuring. The season starts on the Saturday, and going to be on the side and playing. Next again day come in, I was told to go and see the manager, and Graham, for whatever reason, he just said, "Celtic have been in, they've made an offer, the club have accepted it, it's up to yourself whether you want to go or not." And when he kind of said that, I was deflated in many ways, because I didn't really want to leave Liverpool. And I felt that if he's saying that, the club have accepted it and he wants me, well, not in so many words saying he wants me to leave, but that was kind of the gist that I got. And in the end, I went up, talked to Celtic. Liam Brady was manager, and ended up signing for Celtic. And that was the day that I left Liverpool and never set a foot back in the place till I was working again on the media side. And it was a sad occasion, to be quite honest with you. As I say, I didn't really want to leave, but with your heart, you're thinking you're going to play for Celtic and it's going to be a new chapter in your life. And in fairness to Graham, I could understand his reasoning as well. I was 31 years of age. I'd had my injury problems, and I had good money. I think it was 925 grand or something like that, which was decent money back in that day.
And good money today.
Yeah, and I kind of appreciated, how it came about. And that's looking back at the time. You think, well, a little bit underhanded. But I spoke to Graham since umpteen times, and there's no animosity between us. He's still a good lad.
Well, that's good. He has enough animosity between other people, so you can. And when you retired in '97 you went back to Coventry City. You hadn't really featured in the, a couple of years. You didn't play a lot of games because of your injuries. How was that on you mentally, knowing that you want to play, your body's not cooperating with you, and then having to realize that, I just can't go anymore?
Well, it's a hard thing to take. It's a hard pill to swallow, I think. I went back to Coventry. Phil Neal was manager at the time at Coventry, and he took me back. And the idea kind of was like to play if I could play, and then break into the coaching side, and go and obviously be a coach under Phil. But Phil, he eventually got the sack after about, I don't know, 6 months or something like that. Wasn't very long, I don't think. And then new manager came in, Ron Atkinson, and then after that it was, he wants to bring his own people in. I didn't figure. I played quite a few reserve team games. I was quite involved. I was still playing, but the pace and the tempo, like the first team in the Premier League, was probably just a little bit too much for me at that stage. I was 34, 35. Even I was there till I was 36. So it was just a little bit too much for me. And I think sometimes you just got to hold your hand up and appreciate that. But it's never easy doing that when you're the player and you look at it from your perspective and you think you can still do it. But again, from other people looking, the bigger picture is that you probably can't. And I think you understand that and appreciate that more when you're finished than actually when you're still in, like, try to do it and try to achieve and still try to be up there.
You know, according to my notes, you played more matches for Coventry City than you did for Liverpool. Do you ever go back there? Do you get the same kind of reception that you do when you go to you're part of Liverpool's environment?
No, not really. No, I mean, I played more league games for Coventry than I did for Liverpool. But I think overall, probably I played more at Liverpool than at Coventry. I had a great time. I grew up at Coventry. I moved down there as a 17-year-old, very wet between the years, green, very naive young lad coming from a small village going into a big city, playing for a big team in the First Division. Well, it's not a big team now, but it was back in the day. They were in the English First Division. So I made my debut at 18 in the English First Division, which it was mainly due down to Coventry, to be quite honest with you, because they gave me the opportunity. And, I have fond memories of growing up there. And I think, a spell between 17 and 23 as a youngster, I think most people would suggest that or say that that's quite a learning period and a growing up kind of period. And that I did all that down at Coventry. So I've got a lot to thank them for. And as I say, I go back now and again, but not as much and as frequent as probably what I would like. My involvement with Liverpool has been, I was 8 years at Liverpool and, had far more success there. I've stayed in the area since I finished. I'm working with a TV company now, LFC TV. I've been doing that for 13 years. So my involvement is more with Liverpool than it certainly is with Coventry at this moment in time.
Now, how's that? Oh, go ahead, Des.
No, go on.
No, I was just going to say, how are you finding the TV land? Being still involved with the team, obviously, and that's the way that the media has kind of transformed in the last decade, and really now very personable with the players versus, kind of taking things from afar, right?
Yeah, I think social media has played a big part in the way that the media is at this moment in time. I think I started back doing Radio Merseyside was when I first started doing media following Liverpool. And that was back probably, 1999, 2000 or something like that. And then I left there and ended up going with LFC TV in 2007, I think we started. So I've been there 13 years. So you do see a little bit of a change. But I think it's mainly been the social media side that has certainly changed the way that the coverage of games and the coverage of news is it's at an instant. It's you just need to scroll through some of the pages, and some of it's good, but a lot of it is obviously as bad as well. But from a media point of view, I think being a local, being a club station, you are kind of partisan towards Liverpool, and but you still have to try and be a little bit like unbiased. Now, you have to put your kind of your kind of spin on it and how you see it, and it's not always been good, to be quite honest with you. You can imagine over the last 13 years, it's only really up till the last couple of seasons has been absolutely fantastic, but there's been highs and lows and all the way through that. So it's fantastic for me because it keeps me involved with Liverpool, and it keeps you involved in the game that you've been part of since I was 17 years of age.
Well, I mean, obviously you're part of LFC TV when the takeover after Hicks and Gillette. So, I mean, you had the, first row perspective on the outgoing and incoming. So you share some thoughts about that at the time?
Well, at the time, and the two were lauded. I mean, Hicks and Gillette. I mean, everybody was. I remember sitting in the stand, and the whole crowd were up and like clapping them and applauding them, and it quickly turned sour. I think the best thing that was obviously them, and probably both people's interest was to go their separate ways. And I think since then Liverpool have certainly progressed in a really good manner. And I think with the new owners, I think it's certainly been a big plus. But you have to remember that Hicks and Gillette, they had big ideas, and they had a vision that where they wanted to take Liverpool, and it just wasn't right for them probably at the time, and certainly wasn't right for Liverpool. And they nearly bankrupted the football club. So I think we've got a lot to thank for, like Mr. Henry and co.
Yeah, they're just like me. My ideas are bigger than my wallet. So.
Well, that was football. There's a lot of clubs, succumb to that kind of problem. Mm-hmm. I think the way that the clubs run at this moment in time is on a level keel, and I don't think they'll overspend. I think you have to probably sell players to bring players in, but the recruitment policy and the way that they've gone about the business, not just on the field but off the field as well, finds the club in a really, really strong position at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm. Gary, you must have been in two minds, obviously, playing at, training at Melwood. That must have been a sad day for you. Obviously, it's great to have the new complex at Kirkby, but again, all those amazing memories at Melwood. How did you feel when, obviously you got the news?
Yeah, Melwood certainly is, or certainly had changed, unbelievably, since I was part and parcel, the football club, going down there and training on a daily basis. As I said, we used to get the bus down there and just get the bus in, go and do our training, have a cup of tea maybe afterwards, and then get on the bus and come back up to Anfield. So it wasn't the complex that it certainly became. But, as you rightly say, it's, fond memories. And you look at, going back to all the days, the Shankly days, where they used to play staff against the kids. And that was a thing that was a tradition that kept all the way right through till, certainly I was there, and probably even after that. And so there's been a lot of fond memories made there. And you wonder, you just wonder maybe, the way that the results have gone this season and the way the performances have gone. I'm not saying it's because we've left Melwood, but, they might have some, personally, I would have preferred, had we done the exchange and the move down to Kirkby at the end of the season, or other than midway through the season. I think that ideally, in an ideal world, that would probably have been a better scenario than maybe what it was halfway through the season, and especially with everything that's going on at this moment in time as well. But sad loss, but that's progression. It's, as I say, we talk about involvement in football. And that's part and parcel. I think the biggest thing, it certainly it's a help because everybody gets together again. Like the kids become, part of training where the first team are training, and everybody is kind of together, which was very much the way it was when I was playing. And I think that was lost, having the separate academy down at Kirkby and the first team training at Melwood. I think ideally you want all to be together. And it's a massive move, and it's a massive project that they've kind of undertaken. But the facilities down at Kirkby are they're second to none anywhere in football. And as I say, that's progression and the involvement of the football club, and it's something that probably was looked at for a long time, but never quite happened. But we have to see that as progress, and I'm sure in the long run, if we can create as many memories and happy memories as we did at Melwood down at Kirkby, then that'll be. We'll soon forget about Melwood.
Yeah, I think the sad part though about Melwood though is it's going to get torn down and just be residential area, which is sad in itself because growing up, I used to go there quite a bit. I used to be one of those lads that would get a bin and stand on the bin and watch the players. You can't do that now at Kirkby. So I think some of that, mystique is taken away. I wish they would have kept, Melwood as a community centre rather than, the residential stuff that they're going to do. So I think that's sad. We had George Scott on, and you can see it in his face, talking about Melwood, you know, the sparkle in his eye, and I think, you know, the players now obviously will look at Kirby as just like, this is the state of the art, but, you know, like yourself and the players before you will look at Melwood like it's a shrine.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of discussion before it happened, wasn't there, about like how best to keep that kind of history. It is it's a shame when you think about it, like there's going to be like a load of semi-detached houses or like detached houses or terrace houses, and not really, you know, what the football club. I'm not sure if they've got a plaque or anything like that, but you know, it is sad, but that's what happens. And this industry at this moment in time, the football industry is a juggernaut, isn't it? And it wants to roll as fast as it possibly can. And as I say, they probably see it as progression. And you know, the historians of the game and the people that are kind of in love with the game would always like to have a little bit of Melwood retained in some shape or form. But you know, whether that happens or not, I don't know. It's the politics of the game that sometimes, you know, we're best not getting involved in.
Yeah, I would just like to buy a house there just to say I'm living on Melwood. Gary, I know, you know, you've had some amazing career, especially, you know, 8 years at Liverpool. What are some of your greatest moments, and then obviously what are some of your worst moments?
On a playing level, I mean, just the sheer fact that I was with the group of players that I was with for 8 years was satisfaction enough. I mean, I had a great time, not just on the field but off the field as well. Made a lot of good friends, lifelong friends, to be quite honest with you. There's always ups and downs in football. I think you can't appreciate the highs unless you appreciate the lows. The lows were obviously the injuries, when you're struggling to get back and you're on your own and you're putting out all that effort in to try and get back and get fit. And then when you do get fit, you obviously pick up another injury and then you're back out again. And there's been so many of them in my career. But the highlights, obviously, winning the league on 3 occasions, being involved in an FA Cup tie, or winning FA Cups. You know, I was there when we won the 2. I didn't play in the final against Everton, both 86 and 89, but you know, you're still part of that then. I played up till then, so just being involved with that. And you know, I think the biggest thing you can say is, like, growing up as a kid, I always wanted to be a footballer, and I think if you can grow up and live your dream, then there's not many people can say that.
Yeah,
so
true.
I think that would be the biggest thing, that I grew up wanting to be a footballer and achieved that dream. Not
a TV pundit.
Well, no, I'm working on that as well. No, I think that's just it's a little bit of a sideline that, fortunately for me, it's happened because of what I kind of have achieved on a playing level. But on a personal level, I think not an awful lot of people know this, actually. When I first signed for Liverpool, my wife was heavily pregnant, and we were staying in a hotel in Liverpool just across from Lime Street. I think it was the Holiday Inn at the time, or the Moat House or something. I can't remember the name of it. And I actually ended up delivering my second child. So from a personal level point of view, delivering my second child was probably a lot easier than maybe like winning, a lot harder, should I say, than winning like league titles and FA Cups.
Hey, you know, Gary, you talked about your highlights professionally as a footballer. What about as a media person? Have there been some interviews or segments that you look back and say, man, that was something that I'll cherish and never forget?
Oh, absolutely. I think Istanbul, I was working with Radio Merseyside. That was just like unbelievable. It was just an incredible kind of moment. That was probably the highlight. You know, we were staying in a hotel with the BBC just off Taxham Square, and that was, you know, the main hub of Liverpool players. fans and everything like that, and they congregated there. The atmosphere was absolutely surreal. And obviously to go on and win it in the manner in which we did win it, it was spectacular. And never forget that. And that really was like probably the pinnacle of like as me as a pundit. But there's been like many times. The unfortunate thing with us with regards to us winning the league was the fact that we couldn't all celebrate together. And I think that's been the biggest thing in the last couple of years. But highlights all the way through. I'm trying to think. Cup games when we won the FA Cup down at like the Millennium Stadium at Cardiff. Certainly that was big occasions. And I think, but Istanbul would probably be the one that stuck out in my mind. That was really fantastic because I was there, and along with all the other Liverpool supporters as well.
I thought you were just going to say your biggest one was just sitting next to Jason McAteer.
Well, Jason, to be honest with you, like we have a good crack, myself and Jason. So I believe he's been on as well. But I mean, Jason's very good. He can tell a lot of good stories, and he's one of these players that he gets a little bit of bad press, to be quite honest, because like it was of that era, the Spice Boys era, where like they didn't tend to win anything. So anytime that he throws questions at me, like I'll just go ask him, how many times did you win like the league? But no, we have good banter with Jason. As I say, he's a good pundit, Jason. I think he gets, as I say, he gets a lot of criticism. He goes on social media too much. I think he gets heavily involved in social media, and it's probably not the way forward for him, but he's a cracking lad. Yeah,
the United fans love him.
Well, him and John Aldridge, I think, just do that to wind everybody up, to be quite honest with you. They give as good as they get, in all fairness, but it's something that always, when I go in and we have a wee conversation with Jace, it's always something that he points out, the fact that he's been hammered in social media, or he's hammered somebody in social media.
You get to play any golf with Jason at all?
Jason's a very good golfer. He's very technical, Jason. He likes all his lessons, and he goes on the swingometers and things like this. And he's had a few lessons, and he gets all technical. But he is a good golfer. I think he plays off about 5 or 6, I think, Jason. So he is a good golfer. I have played with Jason, but he's not the best golfer to play golf with, because it's all about him. He plays in a 4-ball, and there's only him. The other 3 don't exist. It's all about him. Walks across your lines and things like that. And he's not a real partner.
He's still very competitive.
Well, he is very competitive. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I played in a supporters match with him about 4 years ago, and he didn't take it like it was a charity.
He probably takes it more serious now than what he did when he was playing.
You may. That's right.
He's one of these players that's probably become a better player now than what he was when he was actually playing.
His legend grows as each day goes by.
Yeah, he wasn't that bad, to be fair.
I actually wanted to talk a little bit, because when we see you with Jason and with Peter as well, Peter McDowell, your chemistry, all 3 of you, are just, you feed off one another really, really well. Obviously, after being a player, you started at Radio Merseyside, right? Which seems to be a lot of people start there, and then progress into punditry. How was it working for Radio Merseyside?
I enjoyed it. I was doing a lot of the games for them. The one thing that I didn't like about Radio Merseyside was they always had to be first in the stadium. So if the kick-off was 3 o'clock, we had to be there for about 12 o'clock. And, this is 3 hours behind before the game and everything like that. I always remember going to Istanbul with Radio Merseyside. We were there honestly, it must have been about 8 hours before the kickoff. They were like sat in the stadium, and we were just like twiddling our thumbs, doing absolutely nothing. But it was a great experience for me. And back in that time, obviously, we did it all from the ground, Radio Merseyside. And that was obviously fantastic because you get to go to Anfield again, you get to meet people. And yeah, it was a way in. And then obviously LFC TV started in 2007. I've got a lot of people to. Mark Platt was and Paul Rogers, who was. They were the two guys that probably got me the job or got me the gig at LFC TV. So I've got a lot to thank them for. But radio, it's kind of different media to television, but it's enjoyable, and it was enjoyable. We had some great times, as I say. I remember some great trips down to Cardiff and the Millennium Stadium for the cup finals, and when we went to Dortmund when we beat Alaves, I think in the Europa or the UEFA Cup final. So I had a lot of good trips away and a lot of fun there. And some of, most of the lads are still there, like say Mike Hughes and Ian Kennedy. These two are still there. And I ended up doing a radio programme with them the last couple of years with Ian Snodden, called Snods and Diz, which we did on a Tuesday night, 6 till 7, and it was kind of like light-hearted kind of thing. We had guests on, and but I mean, thanks to COVID and due to COVID, that that's had to take a back seat. But I owe a lot to Radio Merseyside, to be quite honest with you. That's why anytime they phone me up and ask me to do something, I'm always quite willing to do it, because, as I say, not been for them, then I probably wouldn't have been given the gig at LFC TV.
You've been there since 2007, you said, at LFC TV? Is that right? Yeah. So, I mean, that's right when it started, right? That's when Peter was the first announcer, I think a lot of the chemistry is built upon that. You guys just been together for a long time.
Yeah, well, Pete was there, and then Pete left, and then he's come back again. Mm-hmm. Claire Rook was the girl that presented. She's back in as well. So you do build up the chemistry, and with the guy John Bradley, who I do the commentary with as well. He's been doing it all that time as well. So you do build up a rapport, and you kind of know exactly how to work off people and rub off people as well. So. Hopefully it'll continue for a couple of years yet, but it's a far easier job when the team are successful and the team are winning. It's, as I say, being a club channel, it's so difficult to find fault with people and blame people. It's as I say, it's a far easier job when everything's going good and everything is rosy in the garden. And we've been very fortunate since Jurgen Klopp's come into the setup that's been the case, and certainly last year was probably one of the most enjoyable ones that we've had, even the fact that we haven't had crowds as well. So, but the fact that we've won that league title, I think was very pleasing from my behalf.
Yeah. Gary, on a personal standpoint, it's been great catching up with you again after a couple of years, and we hope that once everything gets back to normal, that you'll make another trip across the pond and we can have another pint together. So we appreciate your time today.
Look forward to that, guys. Thanks very much. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely. Stay safe. Hopefully this pandemic will finish, sooner rather than later. Also wanted to ask you, with not being able to celebrate, last year's Premier League title, because it's weird. I put it aside for a while because Jurgen obviously was thinking about January to do the parade or do something. Obviously we still can't. That when we lost to Man City, it really hit me we're not going to celebrate. It's just going to fizzle out. Especially now, obviously with City probably going to go on and win it. It must be hard for you and Jason and Peter as well to not be able to see the fans, to see the City celebrate as we should.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you say it's hard for. I mean, it's nowhere near as hard for us as what it is for the players and the management and the coaching staff and the fans. I think you saw the reception that was afforded to the lads when they won the Champions League. Now, I'd be surprised if it wasn't on the same level as that, if not even bigger, to be quite honest with you, with celebrating the league. But as you rightly say, it probably doesn't look as if that will happen anymore. And I think that is the sad thing about it. You know, you've waited 30 years to be in this position to go out and celebrate, and for want of a pandemic, then you know, you haven't been able to do that. But I think everybody kind of understands and the reasons why, but it doesn't detract from the fact that it's going to be a big loss, to the fact that nobody's been able to celebrate because we've waited so long, and that's been the one big thing, I think, that, you know, the sad thing about it. I mean, who knows? I mean, I think if the football club were able to do it in some capacity or some shape or form, I'm sure there would still be a massive turnout, but it would still be a little bit of an anticlimax if we say finishing like second or third position in the Premier League, and, you know, Manchester City are celebrating the title and we're celebrating the title from the year before. It just wouldn't be quite the same. But you know, you can't erase it from the history books. It's there for everybody to see. The players have still got their medals, but I'm sure it's the one thing that they would swap for a lot of things. You know, just that celebration, to be with their fans and have that bus trip around the city. You know, fingers crossed it's in one shape or form it might happen, but it won't be quite the same.
Well, I mean, if we win the European Cup, you know, this season, then hopefully we'll have a parade.
Well, that obviously is the aim, isn't it? Big game tomorrow against Leipzig. So, you know, first and foremost, get that result done, and let's see what can happen. But that would be certainly a way to do it, wouldn't it? To celebrate winning the Champions League again, and just throwing the league title from the year before in as well. That would be a fantastic celebration, and I'm sure that would be more than make up for the fact that we haven't been able to do that so far. Celebrate the league.
Are you commentating tomorrow?
I am. I'll be commentating. I think the game's in Budapest, isn't it? So it's a strange one. I don't think they've quite sorted out the return leg either. I'd be surprised if it's at Anfield, to be quite honest with you. But who knows in these strange times what's going to happen. But it's a tough one. I think it's probably one of the toughest ties that we could have got. I said last season against Atletico, I thought that was one of the toughest ties, and obviously it proved to be. Again, I think this year we've drawn a little bit of the short straw coming up against Leipzig, who, you know, I think are a decent side. So we'll have to be certainly a lot better than what we've maybe seen in recent weeks to get the result.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but I think, you know, Liverpool can do it, because I don't think we've been playing too badly. That's the thing. It's just individual mistakes that have cost us, and then some dodgy, you know, VAR decisions.
I think when you look at performance is such a minute, little, you know, difference between success and failure. And like some of the performances, I mean, even against Leicester, I mean, you can't tell me that like we were second best to Leicester in any department of that game out of the weekend. I mean, we dominated for like so much of the game. But, you know, you're losing it, even against the Manchester City. You know, there was there were moments where you think, you know, at 1-1 it could go either way, and but that's football. You've got to get results, and the results have certainly gone against us in recent weeks, and hopefully that's just a little blip, and we can get back to winning ways, especially in the Champions League, which probably looks like the only way that we're going to obviously be able to win some this season.
It wouldn't be bad to win big old ears again. I'll be all right with that. It's not bad.
I think a lot would be happy with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But Gary, thank you so much for coming on. Really do appreciate it. It's been an honour. You know, always great to get, you know, ex-players' stories. You know, at a time, you know, where I grew up as well in the 80s, early 90s, was some of the best football I've ever watched. You know, from Liverpool, and you know, I used to travel home and away as well. So I miss those. I miss those times. You know, I'm 3,000 miles away, so you know, I all I have to do now is just scream at a telly, which isn't the same.
There's a lot of people do that. That's a lot of people doing that here as well now. Nobody at the games.
It's been a pleasure.
Cheers, lads. Thanks very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Cheers, Gary. Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.